everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Quick Art Talk. So I guess it's becoming like a series. Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much for sending in the positive feedback and the negative feedback from first session. Of course, I'm learning here. As always, life is a long life learning journey, and so I want to improve these videos for you to be able to be more clear of a communicator to everybody. Right, these quick art talks, we're going to cover topics, and I can talk about it for hours and hours because it has to do with my profession, what I do, what we teach at school at Focal Point, and what we stand for. So last week we defined what concept art is. I hope it was clear, and always you're always allowed to, of course, to post comments, questions. You can always come up with other ideas, like, hey, what about this, and you forgot to mention this, and how could you say that? In any way, we have to be very careful what we, of course, say if I also, claim to be a concept artist as well. So what's up with reference? The title alone, good concept artists don't need reference, right? That is a lie, all right? I just want to make that clear as possible. The reason why the title is made that way, but because, I wanted to make it catchy, okay? I wanted to make it catchy and to, see what the reaction would be. The truth is the complete opposite, right? It is very important to know, right? Because I think most of the audience is aspiring students, or maybe even people that already work in the industry that clicked on this video and thought, yeah, right, he's not a good concept artist, don't use reference. That's bullshit, right? And it is bullshit because I believe that it is very wrong to not use reference. I wanted to make this video because I felt like a lot of young people that are aspiring concept artists, and there's sure a lot of talented people out there, and they are they think it is an honorable act to not use reference. Right? You're a concept designer, so everything should be out of your mind. Everything should be straight drawn out of your head and designed without any help from the outside. But when you think about it, anything you draw it because you observed something, right? Let's go back to the basics. When you have a kid of 5 years old, and we were all there, when I was 5 years old and I was drawing trees and apples and castles and soldiers and cars and lions, even though I was drawing it out of my mind, my head, I was still referring back to the real world, right? So we again come back to the definition of concept art what we talked about last week. Now, I believe that concept artists are able to do their job well when they understand the world, right? Meaning that when I was 5 years old and I was drawing those castles and lions and all these cool things and dinosaurs, holy shit, I had a whole journey and a whole chapter in my life where I was only drawing dinosaurs, scouting the world, making them in beautiful landscapes, dinosaurs that were walking together, eating each other. I was very much into dinosaurs. But again, we do that because from observation of the real world, right? Those landscapes that I was depicting in my head, I was not using reference back then, but it was just through observation, right? And when you're a kid, and most of us been drawing when we were children, you are an enthusiastic observer, right? As a kid, you absorb things on a very high rate, and a lot of information is coming in. And, one way to show that is on paper. That's why kids love to draw. So concept art is, I guess, also an extension of your childhood, and I'm not even ashamed of that, because I encourage concept artists to be always enthusiastic. And I think the corporate world is sometimes robbing us from that curiosity and enthusiasm, right? But where I'm getting to, what good concept artists should do. Good concept artists don't use reference. Well, that's a lie. Good concept artists understand the world, right? They understand their surroundings. They understand how things work and how to achieve that, right? How to do it in the best way possible so you can deliver the best possible ideas and concepts, right? Starting off from the basics when we were kids and we were drawing castles, lions, dinosaurs, etc., etc., we had no idea how to utilize, we just had a very primary basic idea of how a human looks like, how a lion looks like, and we will draw it in our own way, right? We were reinterpreting our reality in a very childlike way because our visual library was, not that developed. But how to make it even better, how to make your drawings and designs even better is to, of course, being able to observe the world in an efficient way, right? Like I think I mentioned it last week, is that even when we don't work, we kind of work because we always observe how light works on certain objects, how shape look like, how it would be, we even like read articles on, how it would be to be on a different planet, right? Because we are referencing always back to, Earth, right? That's why our landscapes will always have that blue haze in the distance, because, well, our atmosphere is, in that color. But maybe on other planets it is different because of, the atmospheric composition is totally different. So good concept artists understand the world. They understand the function around them. And even when you increase your visual library, I always use reference. And I think a lot of, especially my friends that I'm in touch with, like Darek Zabrodsky, that of course is also a concept artist. He is also a concept artist. We run the school together. There is no piece where he also doesn't use any reference, right? And again, I wanted just to make this video to make clear that, reference is a mandatory key factor to have and use all the time, right? Be ready for it that you cannot charge your client for spending time on collecting reference, but it's part of the job, right? It's part of the job, and it's part of your skill to be able to find good reference, acquire knowledge that is needed to execute a certain concept, and make it accordingly, of course, to, industry standards. So continuing when you are, a child, right? We don't have that information how to utilize a reference and, how to use it in the most effective way, right? You're a kid, you play outside, you watch a movie, you see a lion, you watch some illustration and books with dinosaurs, you go outside, you see cars, you go back and you draw, right? You don't know any better to, have, to read about the function and to have pictures open on cars and then draw it, right? That's not what we do as kids. And then, but it still develops a fundamental understanding of how objects looks like, right? And then when you're, for example, 15, 16, and you decide to be a concept artist, and you force yourself to be proud of yourself to draw without reference, well, guess what? Your stuff will still look childlike because you didn't develop from when you were a kid, when you were an enthusiastic kid, when you were drawing maybe every day, but you were not utilizing your reference and your visual library in according way, right? And so you have to spend a lot of time to acquire reference and draw from studies before you even go into designing your own shapes, right? That is the step that we have to understand. There is nothing noble about making something without a reference and be proud of it. With all due respect, I just call it inefficient, and I would even go as far and call it stupid. Why would you not make use of the world that is surrounding you? Everything is in your reach. And now today, with internet, there is just no excuse, right? Like, I get it, nobody has, when you're an aspiring concept artist, right, you have no solid income. I totally understand that you don't have the money to travel and all that, that, of course, I was the same. But come on, you do have internet, right? In most cases, I hope. right? And you can Google anything, you can read articles, you can enrich your mind and your visual library that way. Knowing the function of a certain thing or certain asset or vehicle or architecture will set your mind free to be able to reinterpret it visually. Just seeing and remembering is, of course, again, not enough, right? And we talk at Focal Point School, we talk of course, extensively how to utilize reference. There is the theory that I explain, there is direct reference, where you look, for example, when you're designing a ship like this, how I'm doing here. Well, right now I'm rendering it, but when I was designing it, I was of course looking at other ships, how to utilize the paneling, the detailing. And there is then there is of course a more abstract reference use. When I was looking at animals, poses, how do they look like, and trying to emotionally extract that feeling and make those shapes, more fitting to, a mechanical object like this. And it's a whole process, right? Reference is not just I look at a picture and I just take details out of it, right? Once we now agree that reference is needed with every single picture, don't make a misunderstanding that, you just need to copy it to make it successful. Now you have to increase your creativity in order to be an effective designer, right? So have a lot of reference images. Know how to organize your folders with those references. Being able to take huge chunks of details out of an existing object, or the other way around, being able to abstract the emotional feeling out of, for example, out of an organic object and being able to translate into something mechanical. There is no limit, basically. You're only limited by what we know from this world. The way how we rearrange it, we are completely free with that, right? It's just like counting to 1 to 10, and that is your world, that is your order. But there are multiple combinations, right? There are multiple combinations that you can come up with, with those 9 numbers, right? Because the 10 is basically a 1 and a 0. So I hope that in that sense it makes sense. And yeah, how to start with it, right? Excuse me, I had to take a sip because now that it's freezing outside, it's winter here, I get dry very fast. Anyway, how to start with it, right? Most of the time when we look at portfolios of aspiring artists, and we know that they have the creative power, we see sometimes that they are forcing the uniqueness out of their portfolio, right? So you will see a lot of zombie apocalyptic landscapes, post-apocalyptic world, totally sci-fi things that that are so uniquely done that it feels kind of sometimes silly. And it feels silly because the artists, even though they usually have proper drawing and painting skills already, like the fundamentals are like showing through, the ideas are not there. The reason is because we can see that that person actually didn't do much research, for example, about, how space stations look like in the real world, right? Or when they're designing a mech, did they think about the movement? Did they do reference on, existing movable machines and joints? And again, for example, making a mechanical walker, like from mech design, it is not necessary to look at other mechs or other concept artists. Of course you can do it because it's up to you how you extract your knowledge and visual reference, but go deeper. Look even at cars, right? I gave this example in class as well, where you take a normal car, just a normal civilian car, take the wheel off of it, and you can see crazy amounts of detail going on, right? You have the brake plate, the brakes itself. You have you have a lot of mechanics that you have to have in order to make the wheel spin and absorb the shocks from when it's driving. And so similar mechanisms can be used when you're making a mechanical walker, right? Like I imagine if you make a mechanical walker, for example, you'd also have to have some shock absorbers, heavy joints that we see also in cars, because guess what, you're driving on sometimes uneven terrain and your car needs to adjust, so it has to have joints there in order to absorb the shocks accordingly, because without it the car will just fall apart, trust me, really. You even kind of can experience that with, when you have a bicycle, and because I'm Dutch, I had a bicycle for most of my life. That is like, our culture. And, these bikes were like rough, rugged. They didn't have any shock absorbers, right? It's just, wheels mounted on a frame. And sometimes when you go on a curve or a sidewalk, right, you can really feel the shock going through the bike, and that way bikes were, falling apart if you were not careful, because, they were not, built to, for rough rides like we used to do when we were, of course, young. So again, that is an example of, how function can dictate your looks, right? Knowing that you need some kind of shock absorber for a heavy Mac walker, for example, will let you be, creative on how to come up, for example, with a visual solution. Same goes for architecture. Same goes for environment design. In order to make a good environment, there's nothing proud about it to sit and make an environment design without any reference. Use as many photos as you can. I even encourage to just steal photos and just, of course, adjust them so nobody, will sue your ass for copyrights. But in the end, if you adjust it enough, you are still rearranging something that exists anyway. Here I'm, for example, in this walkthrough, I am making this design. I drew it from scratch and I'm rendering it. But somebody can also, if they want it, I guess, somebody can even like go as far and say, hey, but you stole, shapes of an existing Boeing, and the cockpit looks like that of a construction machine. So, and yeah, that's true. I'm doing that. I am conscious of the fact that, it is my job to look at the real world, understand it, absorb the interesting shapes, and rearrange it in a way that it makes, interesting results, right? So yeah, good concept artists, they just understand the world and they understand how to use that reference, right? Recently I had a friend that he was on an assignment, and he messages me and he asked for feedback. And right off the bat, he said, like, it was something, I'm not going to mention names, of course, but the thing that he was talking about was, well, here's my painting, could you please have a look? And, because we, like, sometimes feedback one another, right? So he was like, yeah, could you, like, please have a look, how, it's going? And then right off the bat, he said, I didn't have time, to do reference because I'm pressed by time. And, well, I'm like, wow, that's the poorest and worst excuse that you can come up with. No time to do reference? That is to me equal to, I made this drawing without a pencil because I had no time to find or buy a pencil. So I just used some shitty markers or something to make, a detailed line drawing. Something like that. It could be compared to. It doesn't matter if you have time or not. That should be accounted for, I call it then poor planning. But if you are about to spend time to make an illustration or a concept, make sure that you have solid reference on the topic, right? Make sure that you do the research needed. And especially when you're an aspiring concept artist, don't feel pressed by time, take your time, absorb, the surroundings. Come up with, an idea that you want to paint or design or draw. And based on that, collect images, go to museums, and use it. Use it to the fullest potential, right? And then with creativity, you'll be able to make it your own. And so, I guess, I don't want to rant on what reference, what you should do as reference. Again, good concept artists, they understand the world and they readjust the shapes in a way that makes their designs unique. So yeah, that can escalate to a different topic of how your portfolio should look like, right? Well, I think one of my ex-students commented that they would like to see a topic like that, right? So how should your portfolio look like? How to attract certain, well, not certain, but, clients from the game and movie industry. How to show that you understand reference. I think staying grounded is here the key aspect of being able to showing that you understand the world. Instead of forcing your shapes, coming up with a nice cityscape with a sunset, with, where the shapes don't make sense, the mood is okay, you're not selling yourself well, right? If you look at a lot of games, that are coming out, a lot of them are grounded to reality, right? Hitman 2 came out that I had the pleasure to work on. That's a very grounded game in reality. Red Dead Redemption, a big hit. Do you have like what, laser weapons there or something, or crazy shapes? No, it's the Wild West. Same for Uncharted and all these other titles, Tomb Raider, etc., etc. Right? Show that you are able to take reference from the real world and make it interesting with the limited, grounded assets that you have, right? For example, when I was working on Hitman, it is clear that it is a realistic world, but you can play and exaggerate some shapes and staying within the frame of, the realistic spectrum. I don't go, oh, I need to force a design, so I'm going automatically to the sci-fi sphere of concept art. No, you can use as much creativism working on a grounded project that is grounded to reality, as well as working on, and the same amount of creativism can be used at, a fantasy project or a science fiction project. So yeah, I hope that that makes sense. And of course, let me know down in the comments what you would like to hear next. The last video had like over 1,000 views, so I'm happy with that. Let's see if we can make 1,500 out of it, and that of course will as well give me motivation to continue these episodic views. And let me know in the comments what you would like to hear next, right? I have a lot of topics in my head anyway that I want to cover, 2D versus 3D, what kind of work should be showed to, attract clients instead of only likes on Facebooks and Instagram, etc. All these things that we want to, make clear to young concept artists, aspiring concept artists, to be able to, lift them up and help them out with their careers, I guess, right? I guess you're watching these videos for that reason. So yeah. It is good that we are keeping these videos short. 23 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes remaining. The only thing that I would like to say is that I'm enjoying these short sessions. I hope it was clear enough. Again, let me know in the comment section, what you would like to hear next. Like and subscribe. These are like the default YouTube, requests. But yeah, I'm doing it. Yes, I'm asking you to like and subscribe if you, of course, enjoyed it. Leave a like if you liked it. Leave a dislike if you didn't like it, of course. I'm not going to force anybody. And yeah, either way, if you watch it till the end, I would like you to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.